time to ask a serious question. How did any of this happen? How did this happen in the first place? I gave you a sort of brief history of Afghanistan and the failures of all the administrations prior. But let's talk for just 1 second about Joe Biden. So, Joe Biden is now blaming Trump. He, of course, says, well, it's not my fault that I decided to simply precipitously withdraw. They put out a pathetic picture, like over the weekend. This White House tweet. They tweeted out a picture of Joe Biden alone in the Situation Room, saying, this morning, the president and vice president met with their national security team and senior officials to hear updates on the drawdown of our civilian personnel in Afghanistan, evacuations of SIV applicants and other Afghan allies, and the ongoing security situation in Kabul. Well, I mean, if he took a picture. I mean, as long as we know that's not a stock photo or anything. There was speculation that was a stock photo, by the way. We don't know if that's true or not. The speculation was because on the wall, the time difference between Moscow and China is apparently 2 hours when it should be 3. And the reason that it is 2 hours is because before March, it's actually a 2-hour time difference. So people were speculating that's not actually a photo from like right now. It doesn't really matter very much. Bottom line is, Joe Biden is not present. Okay, according to the Wall Street Journal, during the 2020 political campaign, Biden presented himself as a globe-trotting leader who had helmed the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, served as Barack Obama's point man on complex international issues, and who is determined to bring a steady hand to national security. Yet the turmoil that has now engulfed Afghanistan, which has led Biden to send 5,000 troops back to the country, by the way, that's double the number of troops that he was taking out in April. So remember that time when we were supposed to withdraw? Now we have 6,000 troops total into the country, apparently. Has confronted the White House with a rather large crisis. Biden said in a statement on Saturday, 1 more year or 5 more years of U.S. military presence would not have made a difference if the Afghan military cannot or will not hold its own country. And an endless American presence in the middle of another country's civil conflict was not acceptable to me. Well, wait a second. I'm questioning. It wasn't about us being present in the middle of another country's civil conflict. It was, do we have the capacity to back allies in killing terrorists or not? That we do all over the world, by the way. The United States military is present in over 100 countries. This apparently will not be one of them, even though it is now a chief terror target. Meanwhile, by the way, Blinken ramped up the Biden administration's effort to deflect criticism, saying that Trump had allowed the Taliban threat to grow. Okay, so here's the question. Even assuming that's true, even assuming that Trump blew it with regard to the Taliban, you came in and then just handed them the country, along with all of our allies, who will now be slaughtered, along with all of our resources, because you decided to precipitously pull out, announce the date, and then just leave. And by the way, it's even worse than that. Joe Biden wants to take credit for that. He overruled everybody to do this. His own intelligence officials were saying this is an idiotic idea. His own generals were saying this is moronic. I mean, President Biden said on Saturday he's going to be sending approximately 5,000 U.S. troops to safely evacuate U.S. and allied personnel, according to the Wall Street Journal, a force slightly larger than the 3,000 personnel who are already in transit back to Afghanistan and the 1,000 already there. But this spectacular failure stemmed from built-in flaws of the Afghan military, compounded by strategic blundering of the government of Afghan President Ashraf Ghani. The Taliban took advantage of U.S.-sponsored peace talks to deceive Kabul about their intentions as they prepared and executed a lightning offensive. Here's the key part. You ready? Here's how bad Biden blew this. The Afghan army, fighting alongside American troops, was molded to match the way the Americans operate. The U.S. military, the world's most advanced, relies heavily on combining ground operations with air power, using aircraft to resupply outposts, strike targets, ferry the wounded, and collect reconnaissance and intelligence. In the wake of President Biden's withdrawal decision, the U.S. pulled its air support, intelligence, and contractors servicing Afghanistan's planes and helicopters. That meant the Afghan military simply could not operate anymore. The same happened with another failed American effort, the South Vietnamese Army in the 1970s, said retired Lieutenant General Daniel Bolger, who commanded the U.S.-led coalition's mission to train Afghan forces in 2011 and 2013. So just to reiterate, the United States worked with the Afghan forces. They trained them in a certain type of combat, namely, they could call American airstrikes in. They had the ability to call in American air resources to clear an area or to pick up the wounded. And then what did Joe Biden do? He said, we're not doing any of that anymore. So it's not just a matter of air support disappearing. It's a matter of the entire model was rooted in a particular level of American support. And without any warning whatsoever, Biden just withdrew the support. Boom, all the supports are gone. Okay, that is like a house that exists in the Hollywood Hills, and the foundations are not particularly stable. You could shore up those foundations, or theoretically, you could just dynamite them and then be surprised when the house falls down. Joe Biden decided to dynamite the foundations for whatever the security strategy was here. There's always a tendency to use the model you know, which is your own model, said General Bolger, who now teaches history at North Carolina State University. When you build an army like that, and it's meant to be a partner with a sophisticated force like the Americans, you can't pull the Americans out all of a sudden because then they lose the day-to-day assistance they need. When U.S. forces were still operating here, the Afghan government sought to maximize its presence through the country's far-flung countryside, maintaining more than 200 bases and outposts that could be resupplied only by air. There were no resupplies available once the United States removed its support. Extending government operations to the most of Afghanistan's more than 400 districts has long been the main pillar of America's counterinsurgency strategy. Mr. Ghani had ample warning of the American departure after the Trump administration signed a February 2020 agreement with the Taliban calling on U.S. forces and contractors to leave by May 2021. But the Afghan government failed to adjust its military footprint to match the new reality. Many officials didn't believe that they would actually leave. Okay, by the way, Joe Biden was informed of all of this. He was told about all of this, and then he just did it anyway. That's the part that's so stunning. I mean, he overruled his own advisors. There were none of his advisors told him that this was a good idea. They were all telling him it's a terrible idea. They were telling him exactly what was going to happen. This wasn't an intelligence failure. As people are trying to blame this on the intel community. This is not intelligence failure. This is a political failure by Joe Biden. He did not care what happened next, period. That's the end of it. I mean, how bad was this, by the way? How bad did Joe Biden absolutely F these people? How bad? He did it. It's so bad that President Biden refuses to allow contractors to continue operating in the country. There's no support. He withdrew all of it. They are all gone. According to the Daily Beast, in the last few weeks, Afghanistan's Air Force became a sticking point in negotiations between the Biden administration and Afghan officials, according to one person familiar with the talks. The country's mostly U.S.-provided air fleet was dependent on foreign contractors to assist with maintenance. As the U.S. withdrawal took hold, the Biden administration refused to even allow contractors into the country to service the Afghan military's aircraft. The United States effectively grounded the Afghan Air Force. So we took away our planes, and we said, you can't use those anymore. And the Afghan government said, okay, fine, we'll use ours. Can we at least borrow some of your contractors so that, our airplanes fly? And the U.S. is like, nope, you're on your own. You're going to have to get Muhammad over there, the guy who's herding the sheep. You're going to have to get him over here. He's going to have to fix up the Apache. And then they're surprised at what happened. In the interim, Afghan air crews were forced to get creative. Maintenance personnel were relying on Zoom calls with American experts in order to figure out how to maintain the aircraft left behind by the Americans. I'm sure that was going great. I'm sure customers are, okay, can you get a better angle? You got your Zoom ready? Okay, we're going to take out your laptop. You're going to aim it in the general direction of the engine of an Apache attack helicopter. And now I need you to explain to me why it's not working. Going to go fantastic. Now it's a mood issue. Photos posted to social media show that Taliban fighters have captured U.S.-provided A-29 Super Tucano light attack aircraft and MD-530F helicopters. Former British International Development Secretary Rory Stewart told the BBC on Sunday, everything is going wrong. Schools are shutting down across the country. Clinics are shutting down across the country. People are taking refuge in their home. Looting is taking place. And of course, again, everybody who had the temerity to work with us is going to be murdered. That is the likely next step here. Now, the good news is that, again, the State Department is making some very strong statements here, like some very, very strong statements. In fact, the State Department put out this particular statement, and it is a stunning masterpiece of just self-importance and delusion. Quote, given the deteriorating security situation, we are working to secure and call on all parties to respect and facilitate the safe and orderly departure of foreign nationals and Afghans who wish to leave the country. Those in positions of power and authority across Afghanistan bear responsibility and accountability for the protection of human life and property and for the immediate restoration of security and civil order. Afghans and international citizens who wish to depart must be allowed to do so. Roads, airports, and border crossing must remain open, and calm must be maintained. The Afghan people deserve to live in safety, security, and dignity. We in the international community stand ready to assist them. Stand ready to assist them? You literally just left. Okay, this is a domestic argument where the police officer arrives, and the husband is literally beating the wife to death. And the police officer takes one look and he goes, you know what? Can't do anything here, and walks away. But as he walks away, he says, lady, if you need help, remember, I'm only a 911 phone call away. That's what this is right now. That is so unbelievably delusional. So unbelievably delusional. But by the way, the delusions don't stop there. We'll get to more delusional nonsense from the State Department. This is crazy. mean, it's absolutely nuts. Don't worry, though. Joe Biden is not going to miss an episode of Matlock. He has not spoken to the American people over the weekend at all. He wasn't planning to. The Taliban had a press conference from the headquarters of the Afghan government. But Joe Biden, that dude's playing shuffleboard up at Camp David. He cannot be bothered. We'll get to more in just 1 second. I mean, you know how many Americans died to secure at least a base, a foothold for the United States to target terror in this region? You know how many Americans were wounded in Afghanistan? Tens of thousands of Americans lost limbs, were wounded, suffer severe psychological distress in order to maintain a base of operations from which we can kill terrorists so we don't get another 9/11. And this dumbass decides, you know what? I'm pulling out. I'm not providing any support. I'm going to not even allow contractors in there to fix their airplanes. But how did this happen? And by the way, it's nothing like Saigon. I mean, just nothing. How could you even see a similarity between this and Saigon? Unreal. We're in a battle for the culture and for our values. Like and subscribe to help keep our videos on the front line of the fight and top of your feed.